Hi there, I'm Diane Evans at PhotoFluent. Welcome to our weekly live program. So last week, we talked about making sure that the subject is your star. And what I mean by that is making sure that the subject, the most important part of your photo, is clear to the viewer. Because I think we've all seen photos, probably taken some, that there's a lot of different components in the photo. And as a viewer, your eye kind of darts around and you think, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to look at here. So there's some ways to bring attention to the subject within the frame. Make it clear. Oh, this is the subject. It's my star. So that's what we talked about last week. One of the things we talked about was to make the lighting really kind of shine on your star. Okay, lighting, star, shining, I get it. It does all play together nicely, doesn't it? But what I mean by that is, oh, my collar is it's all out of whack. Okay, focus, light. When our eyes are looking at something in particular, we like to see things that are in focus and brighter. That's what our eyes tend to go towards, right? So by having the focus on your subject, like a shallow depth of field, making sure it's in focus, that's one way. And the light, if it's brighter than the rest of the photo, then our eyes will naturally go there and say, hey, that must be the subject, right? And you might be thinking at this point, yeah, but when I'm out and about, wandering around, I can't exactly control the light. You can control how you stand in relation to things, but you're not bringing a spotlight, probably not even a flash, that you can light something up outside. But I mentioned in the blog post, I'll link to that if you didn't get to it yet, that there's a sneaky after you get home kind of way to brighten your subject. Editing. I don't think it's sneaky anymore. I know I've gotten some feedback from people that they said they used to think it was kind of wrong to edit, like you're lying somehow and saying this isn't what it really looked like. But I think it's all your decision, what you believe in. But to me, editing is a way of enhancing. It's kind of like for the ladies wearing makeup. You wear a little makeup, you wear a lot of makeup, it depends on your style. Sometimes we want to look natural, just a little better, a little enhanced. That's what I see editing as doing. I'm caught in my microphone. So a little editing, to me, helps the subject, the photo look like I remember it looking. Because sometimes you get it back at home and it's a little flat, boring, not as vibrant. So I like to edit just to make it look like I remember it looking. And in that regards, as far as the subject goes, the subject doesn't always stand out in your photo, right? And if you want it to, then editing can help you do that in a very natural way. And again, I'm not criticizing people who go all out crazy with editing because it's an art form all in itself. And there's some really interesting things that you can do with editing. But just to kind of set the tone, I'm more of a natural editor. I use my air quotes, natural editor, because I like my photos to look natural, but a little enhanced. Okay, so we're going to jump in. Now, when I say jump in, the screen share is a little wonky because I'm going to use Lightroom to show you the edits. So bear with me. Okay. Oh, yeah, there we go. I think we're ready. And if I share the whole screen, you can see it better than if my little face is there. So you're going to lose me, and we're going to do some editing demo because that's the best way to learn. Am I right? Here we go. We are in Lightroom. Now you can edit in other programs. This is my favorite, and so that's where I show you how to edit because that's where I do all of my editing. Um, some editing you can do on your phone or with simpler software. This one in particular gets a little trickier. So if you want to learn more about editing, I have a whole course on that. So just let me know and I'll steer you in the right direction. All right, let's talk through this. This one is in Albi, France. And my subject here, I talked about this one in the blog post. The subject is the door. But is the door the thing that your eye goes to right away? Not necessarily. And why is that? Because this area on the left, that wall, is so bright that your eye is drawn to it. So the first thing I do here is I bring the highlights down so it's not quite as hot over there. And I bring the shadows up. That brings some more brightness in those darker shadow areas. But then it flattens it. So I like to add some clarity. That gives it a little more, it evens it out a little bit. But what I'm going to do next is this graduated filter tool right in the middle here. The highlights, the shadows, the clarity, those are global tools. They affect the entire photo. The tools up here in this little bar, just under that histogram, that graph up there, those are more local. So they impact just a portion of your photo. So I'm going to grab this graduated filter and I'm going to pull it down over that really bright area. And I'm going to give it just a little bit darker feel, maybe even bring down the highlights even more, just specifically over there. Because I don't want it to distract from my star. And the star here for me is a door. So now, this is my favorite tool of all times. It's the adjustment brush. And you grab it here, then you go down to this little drop down and you get to pick what do you want to do with that adjustment brush. Well, mine is set to this lighten preset, so I'm going to lighten, that's the one I want, and see where that circle is. If you scroll up and down on your mouse, it'll change the size of that. And I'm going to brighten right where my door is. The other part of this photo that I'm going to brighten is this stairway, because I want the eyes to go down this path and then to the door. So I bring and you might be thinking, I don't even see a difference. You can adjust it and give it a little more brightness all the way up to here to make it look ridiculous. I like it to look natural. See, if you go too far, it gets that halo. You can see exactly where your brush was. So you bring it down just under that halo, and then you can kind of repeat it so that it's not the exact same area. And again, I'm going to bring that brightness up a little bit. And it's very subtle. I might even go right over the door here, a little bit bigger. So I'll do multiple rounds, different brush sizes, so it looks like there's not a line drawn, so it's not too defined. And then I get a little bit more even as far as brightness and shadows, but I also get more pop, more focus on my subject. Here is the door. Okay, so now I'm going to say we're done with that, and I'll show you the before and after. So you can see it's a very subtle change, but on the left side, you have really bright, distracting wall and a darker door. And on the right, you have a little bit less distracting wall and a brighter door. So do you see the difference there? Do you see how you can make your subject pop even after the fact? Let's look at another one. Let's look at this one. Okay, so in this photo, this is another photo I used in the blog post, but you only saw the edited version. And one of the things I talk about too is removing distractions. So this is inside a winery in Bordeaux. It's very dark, but there's some kind of bright areas. So I expose on the dark side of the world when there's bright areas, because it's easier to bring shadows up, bring details out of the shadows, than bring blown out highlights kind of down and make them less hot. Once a highlight is bright, it's kind of gone. But the shadows you can do a whole lot with. So one of the things I talked about is removing distractions. Well, I find some distractions here, like this bright thing up by the bottle. What my focus was here are her hands picking up the wine glasses, that motion, that moment. So the first thing I would do is I would crop out some of my distractions. I also don't like this shiny menu in the front, so I'm going to bring that out. I like her arm. I might even take it down that far to get my distractions out. That's taking it down a lot. And if you don't have a lot of megapixels to work with, that might be too much. But I'm a cropper. That to me is where I want my photo to be. As far as my subject, I like the other wine glasses. I like the way the light comes through the wine. Now what we have though is my subject, the hands picking up the wine glasses, darker than the rest. So I'm going to bring the shadows up a little bit. And I'm going to bring the highlights down, maybe not a lot. And then I'm going to bring my lovely adjustment tool and I'm going to give some brightness over here to her. The other thing you can do with the adjustment brush is you can do multiple. So I have bright, but I'm also going to bring the shadows up at the same time, but just in that area, just on her hands around the wine glasses, because I want that brighter. Now it's about even with the rest. So that's okay. Or I can really bring highlight to her hands by darkening the rest. So that just brings the light off a little bit. And when you do that, what does it do to your eyes, to the way you look at the photo? Think about the before and after. What do you look at on the left first? I tend to look at these 3 wine glasses because the light coming through them is so pretty. On the right, I tend to look at the hands on the wine glasses first because they're more even, and I find that, oh, there are hands there, what are they doing? Where here, since on the left they're a little darker, so my eye doesn't naturally go there. I would probably even brighten that a little bit more. Now, it was pretty dark. I've pulled a lot of detail out, so that gives me some noise, which I'm okay with, but you can also get rid of quite a bit of noise now in Lightroom. So that is another example. Now, I also want to say that when I share my screen with Lightroom, the way I have to do it so that you can see the panels and everything, I can't also see the comments. So I'm going to pop back in at the end and look at your comments, and if there are questions, I will answer them. But I can't kind of do it along the way, unfortunately. All right, let's look at this photo. This is one of my favorite examples because it's the perfect situation. Let me rephrase. It's the exact situation that most of us find ourselves in when we travel. But it's the least perfect situation for lighting because you have this bright, bright sky and dark shadows. This is in, I think, Dinan, France. And it's in the middle of the day, and you have these narrow streets. So there's a lot of shadow. It makes it really hard because you have such such high contrast. There is not a lot you can do just straight out of camera without editing to get the right shot because your lighting is just too extreme. But with some editing, the magic I call it, you can do a lot. What I recommend, again, underexposing so that you don't blow out these highlights. So these are pretty hot, but you can see it's still pretty dark over here. So what I do is I make the whole photo feel a little darker. Like when you look at the back of the screen, you should look at the dark areas and think that's probably a little too dark. And then you know you have it right. So the first thing I would do here is, you'll see a pattern. Oh, I bring those highlights down and look at the pretty sky that comes out. I might bring those all the way down. And then my shadows, I might bring all the way up. And you think, okay, I can see it all now, evens it out a bit more, but it's a little flat. And that's what clarity's for, the midtones. So I bring the midtones up. And then I think, I kind of like that. It can look a little weird when you go to that extreme. So sometimes it looks a little cartoonish, so I pull back a little bit on the shadows. If the shadows are all the way up, it makes it look a little more cartoonish. So now, what's the subject here? Well, since I took it, I can tell you, it's this gentleman with this little boy getting ready to cross the street. But what looks like more of the subject, at least your eye says, hey, I think this is the subject because this group over here, they're all bright and lit up. So your eye goes zoom right over there. So what I would probably do is darken that group a little bit. Darken wherever the eye is being pulled. And when I darken, I also bring down the highlights because that's usually a big part of it. So I'm going to give that a little darker. And do I need a mask? Luminescence, let's try that. Yep. Okay. We're going to call that done for now. Obviously here, my subject, he needs a little brightness. So I'm going to go to lighten, but I'm also going to take the contrast down and the shadows up. That gives me a little cocktail, and it might be a little heavy-handed, so I don't want to do too much with the same brush size. And then I like to kind of get right in on the subject, not in too obvious of a way. And if you think, I don't know how to do it, so it's not obvious, you'll practice and it'll get there. My method is to just use several different passes with different brush sizes. So I don't outline him or it would look funny. I start with big and then I kind of get smaller and smaller. And yeah, you can see I go right over his face, kind of down his arm. Not an outline, but just kind of highlighting. And what you want to think about is, how does your eye see it? One more pass. And it looks like I'm painting a little bit, and that's kind of what it feels like you're painting. This is, I would probably work on that a little bit more just to make him have more brightness. Oh, okay, so that, I made a copy, but I didn't make a copy of the original. So what you have here is, this is what the final finished product on the left. That is where it ends up for me. So I give a little bit more brightness still, some more vibrance to the color. So you can see now in the final version on the left, you can really see how he stands out. They're still pretty bright, but you just can't do a lot about that. But I think when you look at this as the viewer, because of his position in the frame, because he's bright, because he's mostly focused, that does feel like the subject to me now. Now let's go back to the before and after. Here, I will show you. I'm not sure if I can get it back again quickly, and I don't want to waste time. So, no. Okay. Now, let's do one more. You think? Let's do one more. Quick one. I think here it's very obvious who the subject is, what the subject is. And it's this lady walking in Venice, Italy. Another perfect example of how we're out and about and the lighting we end up with. So you have this bright sky, shadowy, narrow street, and my subject is dark. Now I knew this taking it, that she's very dark, but I know the magic of editing. So I exposed it enough that the sky has still some detail. And so I'm going to take the highlights down a little bit more, bring the shadows up, give me some clarity, and already she starts to stand out more. Then I go here and I have my little brush set up to some exposure, a little less contrast with her, and some shadow, bring the shadows up. And again, if I just did this, all of a sudden it looks like she's glowing. She has a circle around her. So I'm going to undo that brush stroke, and I'm going to do a big brush stroke to give some context around her. And I'm going to get smaller and smaller to where she really stands out. Let's go a little more. And this works with anything. Like if you want the shutters to have a little more pop. This is a bad brush. I'm going to reset it. I'm going to go just with the lighten. You can go brighten the shutters if you want your eye to go there. Keep in mind it's where you want your eye to go, because wherever you brighten, it's going to pull the eye of you, the viewer. So you don't want it to be too many different places, because then your subject gets lost again. So we want her the brightest, but if there's still some areas that you think, I want that to be, say, the secondary thing that people, the viewer, look at, then you can give that a little pop too. So that, let me see. I don't know if we have before and after option here. Let's try. Nope. So what happens is when I make my virtual copy, if I don't make the copy of the original version, but this is the final edited version that I came up with. So you can see I did a little bit more work on her, but in a way that doesn't look like she has a halo of light around her. And that's why I use different size brushes. But you can clearly see in the final version on the left that she's the subject walking down this street. He's there too, but he's not the subject. He might be secondary. This laundry, love to see the laundry hanging. I don't know why, but I do. So you can see the components. You look at her and think she's walking down the street. Then the eye goes around to the other objects in the frame. The laundry, that's pretty bright, so I go there. You go up to the shutters and the buildings. You see the man in the background. So you do a little path around the photo. The purpose of making the subject so important is that's where you want your eyes to kind of start. Right? Okay, now it gets a little wonky when I pop back here. There we are, and we're back. So that was the Lightroom or editing demo for today. Now I hope that helped what we talked about last week make a little more sense. That's the purpose of a demo, because it's hard to describe in a blog post editing and how you do it. So I do a before and after, and I do the best I can to show you with words, but the best way is to see it. So there you go. There was your live program for this week, an editing demo. I hope you loved it. And let me know in the comments if you have questions, if you have comments on how you edit. I love to watch people edit too. I learn something new every time. As long as I've been doing it, I still learn. So I will put in links to the blog post so that you can go back and see that if you didn't get a chance. And I will see you very soon. Bye for now.